Hello, Internet, and welcome to today's episode of Always Right with Jeff and Steven. On today's show, we talk about gender segregation in sports. We talk about a young Republican who got murdered in North Dakota because of his political beliefs, and Steven finally got his microphone fixed. All that and more right after the intro.
Hello, everybody. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm gonna make it.
Wonderful. So we're starting this week talking about an article that was published this past week by The Atlantic, and the title of this particular article was "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." And so they're trying to make this argument that why have gender in sports? Why not have boys play with girls and girls play with boys? And I think it's the natural outcome of the LGBTQ movement. Really all differences between humans are just arbitrary. They're not really real. And so that should be applied to sports as well. And I will be doing most of the talking during this segment because my main man, Jeff, over here, he's not real sportsified. He doesn't know very much about sports. As a matter of fact, we're going to pull up a clip from this past week's college football games, a very awesome ending, and we're going to have Jeff commentate that, and we're going to see what his take on this awesome ending is.
Okay, it was bound to come eventually. All right.
From 39 yards out, Carlson will get this one. Auburn leads by 3. 2nd and 5. They're going to keep it on the ground again. Pete busts one. Pete. Ball comes loose. Did he get it in? Wait for the ruling. Auburn wins.
All right, Jeff, what did you just see?
Okay, so white shirts in Missouri.
Okay.
White shirt was running. Missouri guy was running and dropped the ball. Was it past the touchdown line? I mean, it's a fumble. It's not a fumble. All right. It looked like he did it intentionally. Like I don't know, but and then Auburn recovered it, or. He covered the ball.
Yeah.
But was that behind? I mean, that was Missouri's touchdown line, was it not?
It was. So what does that mean?
Why does? Oh, that means so Missouri did not get the touchdown because Auburn covered it over the touchdown line.
There you see.
Ended the play with possession of the ball. Or something.
Close. A normal person will go, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that ending!" Like, I can't believe that Auburn and Missouri were even close because Auburn is supposed to be vastly better than Missouri, and at the end, Missouri was about to win, and you're just like, "What?"
All right, so tell me if this is normal.
From 39 yards out,
you just jump over people like that.
You can jump over people, but you cannot be launched over people. So what they were doing for a while is people were trying to get behind the line of scrimmage and like be boosted over and try to block the kick that way. But I mean, technically, you can't hurdle people in football. So yeah, you can hurdle them and try to get to the ball.
Leads by 3. 2nd and 5.
All right, take it, bud. Go. No, he was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna put my football over the touchdown line, and that'll count."
That's exactly what he was trying to do. Yeah, he was trying to put it. He was trying to break the plane of the end zone in order to get the touchdown. But when he didn't. Apparently, he didn't have enough grip on the ball, and he basically threw his ball into his own end zone. And they would have won the game. Like this was a big moment this past week of football, especially in our area because this is SEC country, and Auburn was supposed to dominate Mizzou. Mizzou's terrible. And they were supposed to dominate Mizzou, and this game went into overtime. And then there was a missed kick, and there was a call for another kick, and so on and so forth. So Jeff not very sports savvy, so I'll be doing a little bit talking.
I mean, that's the most sports I've watched all
who
week.
is not sports savvy, Jeff. Could you imagine a female playing that sport with those grown men at the same time?
I mean, she doesn't have they wouldn't have, most of those wouldn't have enough body mass to cover the ball. It wouldn't work. Because he was trying to hide it. He was trying to hide it. Like a squirrel hides his cheek. Like
so the statement that there's no need to have any kind of gender or sex differences, especially in combative sports, is nonsensical, and it is the height of stupidity. Even if you took non-combative sports, there is a chasm between men and women. We are not saying that women are less than men in any way, shape, or form. They are different, and that is okay. We need to stop trying to separate genders and sex here. It is a binary for a reason. God designed us this way for a reason, and there's tons of anecdotal evidence, like to a ridiculous degree, to show that men and women are different in sports. Years and years ago, Venus Williams, who is arguably the greatest female tennis player who's ever lived, made a statement that she could beat any male tennis player outside of the top 200. So, one, she's already saying, if I would have to play someone who's not in the top 200 to be competitive. And so there was a 54-year-old man who took her up on this challenge. I believe his name was like Karsten Brox or something like that. And he played both Venus and Serena Williams. He was ranked 203 in the world at the time, and he pummeled them in a single afternoon, beating Venus, I believe, 6-1 and Serena 6-2. That's a non-combative sport.
I actually remember this happening because I remember John McEnroe got in big trouble.
John McEnroe, so
full of crap. Yeah. And
he was on some kind of sport. He was on some kind of talk show in the morning, and they were like, "What do you think about Venus Williams?" He said, "I think she's the greatest female tennis player who's ever lived." And they said, "Well, why don't you say she's just the greatest tennis player who's ever lived?" And he's like, "Because that's not a fact. You know, if she were competing as a man, she would be competing, and she would be ranked in the 600s." And everybody was just blown away by this. And you look at this match, and it's proof positive of it. This guy wiped the floor with him, and he's done several interviews later on. And he was saying he had to play like he was ranked in the 600s just so it could be fun, just so it can be competitive. He's gone on to say that he had to take 50% off of his serves just so that they could be able to have volleys back and forth. Again, that is not taking anything away from Venus or Serena Williams. They are the greatest, probably, female duo who's ever lived. Venus probably being the greatest female tennis player who's ever lived. It's to say that men and women are different. That's just, it's a fact.
And I mean, like,
and that's okay.
That doesn't mean there's no value to women's sports. I mean, the best women's sports give us really nice outfits for women to wear. Tennis, volleyball. These are good women's sports. It's also why nobody watches the WNBA, because they're not as good outfits. But
you're saying nobody watches the WNBA because they're dressed like men and not like women?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to let the non-sports commentator make that statement. I'm not going to get that. But another example is USA had the number one female soccer team in the world for a long time. I mean, our girls were exceedingly good at soccer. They have since lost public favorability because of the whole equal pay arguments that they have been making, which is erroneous. They don't get paid as much as the men, not because they're not as good, but they don't get paid as much as the men because they don't bring in as much revenue as the men. Pay in sports is absolutely affected by how much revenue you're able to generate. But even the best female soccer team in the world got beat by a bunch of 15-year-old boys. I'm not making that up. That actually happened. You can look at it. You can Google it. I have a CBS Sports article pulled up here where an under 15-year-old boys team from Dallas beat the best female soccer team in the world, which was the United States, 5-2. Not even close. Again, Not saying that women's soccer isn't worth watching. Not saying it's not something that's worth doing. There is a difference between boys and girls. We've been seeing this with the trans students at the high school level and the NCAA level, right? There was a large cry a couple of years ago because in Connecticut there were two boys pretending to be girls who had previously in the indoor season, in the winter season of track, ran as boys. And then the spring season comes around where they go outside and they run as girls because they say they're now girls. And they take first and second in the sprinting categories. Go figure. One boy named Terry Miller, he won the girls 100-meter dash with a time of 11.72, which would not have even put him in the finals if he were a boy. So, you know, people constantly accuse Republicans and conservatives of punching down at the trans athletes and the trans people. Well, what does it say whenever we're sacrificing girls' sports for this trans agenda? Who's really punching down?
Right.
It's not us. It's not us. You know, and then there's the whole Leah Thomas debacle where if he were swimming as a male, he wouldn't even made the NCAA finals, but because he was swimming as a female, he won an NCAA gold medal. He stole an NCAA gold medal from females. It's wrong.
Right. And let's not kid ourselves. I mean, like you bring up Leah Thomas finally. That's why this article is coming out.
Yeah, that's why the Atlantic
it doesn't make sense. It no longer makes sense to segregate the sports by gender because we have stopped segregating the sports by gender. We have allowed boys into the girls' sports, and that is essentially the end of women's sports.
And that's the sad part of it. It is the end of women's sports if we allow this nonsense to continue. And quite frankly, no one wants to see guys beating up on girls. And if you do, you need to have your head checked. I don't want to see girls playing field hockey with boys. I don't want to see girls playing football with boys. I don't want to see girls wrestling with boys. I don't want to see girls boxing with boys. Is it because I don't like females and watching female athletics? No, it's not that at all. I believe in chivalry. And I believe men are supposed to protect women, not beat them up. And sure, if you look at the maybe top 1 percentile of females, they might be able to be the kicker on an NFL team or not an NFL team. They'll never be a kicker on an NFL team, but they might be able to be a kicker on a bad NCAA team or a high school team, maybe a good high school team. They're never going to start at linebacker. They're going to get destroyed. It's just not the fact of the matter is the average man is way bigger than the average woman. So that means the above average men who are playing sports are going to be way bigger than the above average women. You know, just look at the number of times that the ball has been dunked in the NBA versus the WNBA versus a single NBA game. There have been NBA games where they have had more dunks in a single game than the entire history of the WNBA. Does that mean that I don't like women's basketball? No, actually, I prefer women's basketball over men's basketball. I'm one of those few people that do because they are better at playing the sport as a team than they are individuals. That's just my opinion. I prefer women's basketball. But I'm not the average person, and I understand that. I'm not the average consumer, and I understand that. To say there's not a difference, it's just wrong. It's erroneous. The biggest female center in the WNBA is going to be about the average size of a point guard in the NBA. They're not going to be a center, and they're certainly not going to be athletic enough to compete against the boys.
So we'll wrap up here with this one, but I'm just gonna say because you're kind of ruining our brand now. That he doesn't watch he doesn't watch the WNBA. Everyone, he watches college women's basketball.
Yes, this is true. He's right. I like to go to our home games and support our home team here. You're right. I do not watch the WNBA. I do watch NCAA women's basketball.
We'd stop this podcast before we really got started. If you thought we were watching the WNBA.
All right, so just the Atlantic. No, you're wrong. Go read the article. I would encourage everybody to go read the article and notice the type of people that they're referencing. You know, they're pulling in social psychologists. What in the world does a social psychologist have to do with performance in sports? It is a poorly.
What role does a social psychologist play in society anyway?
Well, but then there's that argument.
But I mean, like with stuff like this, you always have to look at what they're saying and then what they're actually saying. What they're saying is, maybe segregating sports was a bad idea all along. What they're actually saying is we have to get away from segregated sports because from now on, we're just going to have men's sports.
And if this trans agenda keeps going, it will be the end of women's sports. And I don't want to see that. I don't think any average American wants to see that. But this is the slow incremental process that they're doing to get to that point. Nobody wants to see that.
Right. I mean, and I hate sports.
All right, let's go on to the next
sports
story.
serve a very important purpose. And I know a lot of you have a lot of daughters that are into sports. So fight against this stuff. Let's move on to our next story. We are going to talk about the murder of Cayler Ellingson. So you can be forgiven if you have not heard a lot about this case this week because the media is purposefully downplaying it. So here are the facts. Shannon Brandt, 41 years old, was taken into custody on Sunday, the 18th, in McHenry, North Dakota, after reporting to the police that he had struck and killed 18-year-old Cayler Ellingson with his car. Brandt, who police say was drunk at the time that he was apprehended, told investigators that the crash was the end result of a political argument between the two men, and he claimed that Ellingson was part of a quote-unquote Republican extremist group. After spending a few days in jail, Brandt is now out on bail. $50,000 was paid, and he is released after being charged with vehicular homicide. And this happened in North Dakota.
North Dakota.
So there's several layers to this, as always. The first, let's get it out of the way because I think it's the most boring argument to make because it's just the state of things by now. But if this were a young Democrat being murdered in a blue state, this would be all over the news, first of all. For weeks. Yes, for weeks. And secondly, the murderer would not be out on bail.
Right. Well, and I'm gonna add a thirdly on top of that. Every Republican, especially the Republicans from those states, would be called to the carpet about it, and they would have to make formal acknowledgments of it, and they would have to apologize for it, even though they had nothing to do with it. And we have seen none of that. Yeah,
which leads me into the second layer. This, if we're playing the political game, and I think we need to start doing that more often because Republicans and right-wing persons are really bad at it. But if we were playing the political game the way it needs to be played, this should be tied directly to the rhetoric that has come out of the Biden administration in the preceding weeks.
It needs to be directly tied to that hateful speech that he gave where he looked like a dadgum Sith Lord with a bunch of stormtroopers behind him. That's what it needs to be tied to.
Yeah, the calling all the people who disagree with you MAGA Republicans and claiming that they're trying to uproot your institutions and take over your country, it leads to stuff like this. Now, historically, we have tried to be the principled conservatives and not hold politicians accountable for the actions of their most deranged followers. They do not give you the same courtesy, and I would say that they are intending to stoke division and even in some cases this sort of action. The people at the top are never going to hurt you directly, but the loons in their base are going to get the message and they are going to do it. And then the reason Democrats don't do anything about it is because they don't care and they want it to continue.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that Maxine Waters speech, political rally that she did, where it was either shortly before or shortly after Sarah Sanders went to a restaurant and got run out by a bunch of hecklers. And Maxine Waters, there's a video of her going, "No, they shouldn't be able to eat in public. No, you should drag them out. No, they shouldn't be able." I'm like, y'all are calling Trump extreme, and this is one of the leaders of the Democratic Party saying that I can't go to a restaurant and enjoy a nice meal because of my political beliefs. Who's the extreme one? And Trump is saying things like peacefully protest. Let's go down to the Capitol and peacefully protest. Everyone wants to point to January 6th, right? When people were doing directly opposite what Trump asked. Trump didn't, he never said anything about breaking into the Capitol. Not once. But yet Joe Biden can make the most divisive speech I've ever heard from a president looking like a Sith Lord while he is at it. And a young Republican gets killed, gets murdered, and no one says anything.
Right.
Silence.
So the message is clear. And we can, if we want to take the principled stance, we'll say that it's unintentional, but I'm at the point where I don't believe that anymore. The message is very clear. Mm-hmm. If you are of the wrong political party, you are not safe. The levers of justice do not work for you. In fact, they may actively work against you. And if you are the right political party, if you are the right mindset, then you get all of the protection. You get to enjoy the peace, unless Black Lives Matter is destroying your community. And if you're murdered wrongfully, it's going to be national news for months and months. Yeah. And you cannot have two standards of justice in this country. And there are currently two standards of justice. It will not always be that way.
No.
And when it stops being that way is going to be ugly, because it's going to stop being that way because the right becomes just as vicious.
Yeah, and that's not the side of the aisle you want to take off. I mean, when we've been talking about this in our personal lives, we can only bend so far, right? And get to a point where the bend becomes a break. And whenever things break, it's going to get real ugly, exceedingly ugly. And I know we think that I say hunting down of Republicans, because this poor boy, like the justification that his killer, I'm not even gonna name his name, the justification that his murderer gave was he was on the phone and I thought he was calling people to come get me. So now this is all it takes for you to be able to run me over. That's all it takes. I hold a phone up to my face and now you can run me over.
Right. And we talk about, and you're right, you don't want to piss off any side of the political aisle to the point where they break. But like, Republicans are not going to do anything about this. This is a Republican state.
Mm-hmm. And that's the next point I was going to make. Look at North Dakota. I mean, right. We're not talking Chicago. We're not talking Detroit. We're not talking San Diego, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. We're talking about a rural community in North Dakota, very rural community, North Dakota, that went in 2016. They went 63% for Trump. In 2020, they went 65% for Trump.
Right. So
if it can happen in North Dakota, it can happen anywhere.
Right. And it may sound like we're contradicting ourselves, that the right is eventually going to snap, create a lot of problems. But Republicans aren't doing anything. The current Republicans are not doing anything.
That's right.
There is an environment being put in place right now where people that vote are going to get more and more erratic in their voting, and they are going to get more and more susceptible to some of the worst ideologues that you can imagine. Like, these people keep screaming about fascism, and a real fascist
look up how fascism came around. Yeah,
right. Fascism is reactionary. Fascism is reactionary.
Always has been reactionary.
Yeah. And there is going to be a real tyrant that rises up in popularity in the future, and he's going to be nothing like what these people are complaining about now. He's going to be nothing like Donald Trump. He's going to be nothing like Ron DeSantis. And we are going to put him in power. I say we, meaning the country, are going to put him in power because the people that the populace is to the point where the veil is, the mask is off. They know the Democrats actively hate them, but they're also starting to realize that the Republicans don't really care for them either. Republican establishment is nothing but controlled opposition.
It can get real ugly. When the current conservatives give up on the Republican Party, it will give rise to something that is nasty. This has got to be stopped. This has got to be controlled. The rhetoric has to be calmed down before irreparable damage is done. It's terrifying to think of. But this is the type of events that lead to a Hitlerian figure. People, they call us semi-fascist is what the Democrats like to call us. How long is it before people go, okay, if that's what you're going to call us, you're going to get what you ask for? And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. This needs to stop. I mean, the running down of an 18-year-old boy, young man, because you thought he was calling somebody and you thought it was okay because he's a Republican extremist. He says you're part of a Republican extremist group. That's the result of Democratic rhetoric saying that we are far-right extremists. And you keep calling Republicans, your average Republican, people, ultra MAGA, uber, super duper, whatever you want to call us. Donald Trump was a down-the-line Republican when you look at his policies. There was nothing extreme about the man. He was down-the-line Republican. And when you make the general Republican or an extremist and you call them semi-fascist and you call them Hitler, well, it's okay to kill Hitler. I'm okay with killing Hitler. And that's the point that they're getting at. And the reaction to that is much worse. So stop. We don't need the reaction to that.
Well, it's not going to change until the Democrat establishment starts speaking out against this. The Republicans won't do it, and even when they do, nothing really gets done about it. Democrats actually know how to use power. But the kicker is they're not going to. The short-term gain for them is that their party is advanced. They can just not talk about this story and it'll blow over.
Short-time rewards are going to lead to bad long-term gains. That's the truth of it right there.
That's the political game. All right, let's get on to our next depressing topic. This week's shame segment is aimed at Vanderbilt University, specifically the medical center. So everything we talk about here, it is important to understand. And Vanderbilt was very quick to come out with this clarification. The Vanderbilt University Medical Center is a separate legal entity from Vanderbilt University. They wanted to make sure we knew that because of this story that came out this week. So Matt Walsh, we actually played a clip of his last week about the Little Mermaid, that he was the one claiming that Little Mermaid should actually be translucent because she lives at the bottom of the ocean.
Translucent mermaid.
Yeah. But he is a commentator for the Daily Wire, and he and his team over there have been doing an investigation. Matt has really done more for the anti-trans agenda, the anti-trans movement, than really any other conservative pundit that I can actively think of right now.
I would say he has done more against the anti-trans movement than any singular individual on earth at this point.
Yeah, he certainly has. I mean, he came out with the wonderful documentary, What is a Woman? We're going to play a clip of that shortly. And this past week, he released some findings that he and his team have found during an investigation they launched into Vanderbilt University. Now, Daily Wire is headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. They actively chose Vanderbilt University because it's in their own backyard, and theoretically would have been easier to investigate. And this is very important because it is in a red state. Yes. You are not immune to this just because you live in a red state. Think about all this craziness that is going on with gender transitions being forced upon children, young teenagers, and you would be forgiven for thinking, well, obviously that is illegal. No, it's not. It is a new thing. It is not illegal anywhere. It will soon be illegal in Tennessee because of the results of this investigation.
Bill
If you
Lee
live,
needs to outlaw that as soon as possible.
yeah, if you live in a red state, you need to follow Tennessee's lead. You need to
Yes.
contact your representatives, and you need to make this illegal in your state as well, because I guarantee you, somewhere in your state, there is a pervert trying to transition some of your children.
Mm-hmm.
So, what actually came out of the investigation? Well, first, let's something was confirmed that a lot of people on the right have been talking about, and that's, how is it that so many doctors and medical personnel have latched onto this as the next big thing, when so clearly it is very harmful. And it's the same thing really it's the same thing really, that reason that they can do abortions so easily. Money. And in fact, there is way more money available for gender transitioning than there ever was for abortion.
Didn't this investigation find out that a lot of this is covered by government benefits? This whole Obamacare plan that
not surprising in the least. Oh
from
yeah,
the
and
government.
they've been able to easily fit it into whatever pre-existing condition you need to have in order to get coverage. Yeah. So this claim was famously made in the documentary that Matt Walsh did, What is a Woman, by a female to male transgendered person, so a woman who has decided that she wants to live her life as a man, but regrets the decision. And she is very outspoken about how we cannot be doing this to our children, and that it is a long, long road to reversing some of the decisions that she has made.
I would love to sit and talk about this whole segment for an extended time. We don't have that. I would encourage everyone to go watch What is a Woman. It is well worth the cost of admission to Daily Wire to watch this documentary.
Right. Yeah. The Daily Wire is a subscription service. And this alone is worth it. They do a lot of great stuff over there, but this alone. So this is Scott Nugent talking about the monetary incentive for transing the kids.
For the first time in history, a marginalized group has a huge dollar sign on the top of their head. Every child that they convince is transgender and in need of medical transition, it generates $1.3 million to pharma. And we're believing a pharmaceutical.
That's really the full information context of the clip. $1.3 million a head for the medical community in general. She says pharma there, but the medical, the surgeons, and when you think about it, that makes sense. So
I didn't think about it very hard when she first said that, and I first heard that. We watched this documentary together at my home, and I was like, that's a lot. And a lot of people heard this and was like, well, this is just someone who regrets transitioning. This isn't the average person. This isn't blah, 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 blah. And they've been working on this investigative reporting a long time at Daily Wire. But it's not by accident that they released this a couple months later.
So
because they had the facts to line up that number.
Think of all the things that comes with part of gender transitioning when you are fundamentally breaking the most basic composition of a person. It's a lot of surgery, it's a lot of drugs, and it's a lot of therapy. All of it, and all of it is expensive. So we actually have something from the investigation that sort of further supports this. That is just a claim made, like as you said, by someone who has an agenda. That they are
a bitter individual. They have an agenda. That can't be true, right?
Right. Well, this is from someone who is not transgendered, and in fact, she works at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and she has some things to say.
Starting in January 1st of 2017, according to the Affordable Care Act. Insurance carriers are mandated to cover medical expenses for trans folks. Some of our BOC financial folks in October of 2016, starting a couple years ago, put down some costs of how much money we think each patient would bring in. And this is only including top surgery. This isn't including any bottom surgery. And it's a lot of money. These surgeries make a lot of money. So female to male chest reconstruction can bring in $40,000. A patient just on routine hormone treatment, who I'm only seeing a few times a year, can bring in several $1,000s. So that requires a lot of visits and labs. It actually makes money for the hospital. Now, these I got from the internet, but it's from the Philadelphia Center for Transgender Surgery, which does a lot of surgery for patients. And I just want to give you an idea of how much these bottom surgeries are making. And I think this has to be an underestimate. This is for a vaginoplasty. They're quoting roughly around $20,000 for a vaginoplasty, but that doesn't include your hospital stay. That doesn't include your post-op visits. That doesn't include your anesthesia, your OR. So I would think that this has to be a gross underestimate. I think that's just like the surgeon's piece of it, which anybody who's ever been in the hospital knows that that's like 10% of it. And then the female to male bottom surgeries, these are huge money makers. Again, I think this has to be an underestimate. If they're quoting around $20,000 for a phalloplasty, there's been different things that I've read that said it could be up to $100,000. Dr. Winokur, who's our surgeon, says that there's entire clinics where the entire clinic is supported just by their phalloplasties, and that is like a fraction of the surgeries that they're doing. These surgeries are labor intensive, they require a lot of follow-ups, they require a lot of OR time, and they make money. They make money for the hospital.
Big money makers.
You have a dollar sign on your kid. That's why it's okay, because it makes money. Let's not talk about do no harm, right? And let's start from the top there, right? You're paying for this. The federal government is mandated to pay for this. You're paying for this. That's why it needs to be outlawed at the state level, and it needs to be challenged at the Supreme Court so this nonsense stops.
Well, it needs to stop because it's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I said it.
And then she goes on to say $40,000 for cutting healthy breast off of a young girl.
Yeah. That is nothing to say about the hormone treatments that you have to take if you decide to go down this path. It's nothing to say about the therapy that you obviously will need, because this is an incredibly negatively impactful process on someone's mental state. Someone who is already in a troubled mental state before the process starts.
You do all this, you spend all this money to not even change the suicide ideation rate between pre and post surgery.
Make it worse.
Suicide ideation rate. We're mean and evil because, we've talked about a couple trans people, and people will say we're mean and evil because we didn't use their preferred pronouns. Well, how about you chopping them up or being okay with them being chopped up just so they can go kill themselves anyway? Who really is the mean evil person here? I want to get help. I'm concerned about these people. I know that lying to them and feeding into their fantasy is not going to help them.
Yeah, we last talked about this when we talked about Boston Children's Hospital, and I said at that time, the people themselves that are going through this process, they're troubled. They need help. The hospitals, they're ghouls. They're absolute monsters, and they are out to just eke you for every penny that you are worth. And this is a lot of this makes more sense when you understand that at every level of our culture, at every institution that exists in our society today, there is a vast and concerted effort to break your children, because broken children, by study results, vote left. Broken children don't create families. This is a process designed specifically to prevent your children from creating families, because people who create families are more likely to vote in the best interest of their family, which means a right-leaning government. And it happens here. This is just another tool in the tool chest. It's been happening at the education level for decades. Everything is designed to separate you from your children, to break your children, so that they are a broken person is a reliant person, and a reliant person focuses
You're
on
reliant on someone.
Votes to advance the government, and the leftist agenda. So protect your kids.
And the thing about Vanderbilt, I don't know if you have this clip pulled up. They flat out said to physicians at Vanderbilt Medical Center that if you have a religious objection to this, you need to work somewhere else.
Are you kidding me? I got it up now. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, pull that up.
It's right here.
Let's hear that.
It's right here.
If you are going to assert conscientious objection, you have to realize that is problematic. You are doing something to another person, and you are not paying for the cost for your belief. I think that is a real, I think that's a real issue. So I think, so yes, Vanderbilt, if someone has a conscientious objection to participating in this sort of surgery, it probably has to accommodate you to the extent that you can find another person who can do your job, who doesn't have an objection, other things of that nature. But I just want you to take home that saying that you're not going to do something because of your conscientious, because of your religious beliefs, is not without consequences, and it should not be without consequences. And I just want to put that out there. We are given enormous. If you don't want to do this kind of work, don't work at Vanderbilt.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, if you have a conscientious objection, the First Amendment of the Constitution, you can go work somewhere else. No, I'm not going to go work somewhere else. I'm going to fight you tooth and nail to the best of my ability, so you stop carving up children. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, we can sit here and we can talk about the rights you sort of give up when you come to work at a place. But this is something that Vanderbilt is taking on because of the money. Let's not kid ourselves. And when they say that you're harming people by conscientiously objecting, they're trying. The party line is that you're hurting the patient by not performing this surgery on them. But really, what they mean is you're hurting the hospital.
And sorry, I'm getting too pumped up here. That is where I would absolutely push back. If my conscientious objection, what if it's not based on religious standards? What if it's based on the first part of the Hippocratic Oath? Do no harm. What if I have looked at the research and I see that doing this surgery is what's actually harmful? And I say, no, I'm not going to harm my patient.
The research shows that it makes the hospital money. That's the research that counts. Well, among their many sins, Vanderbilt also launched this program called the Trans Buddy Program. It's only 1 minute and 20 seconds. We'll play it. That's such happy music.
My name is Sean Riley, and I'm the program coordinator for Trans Buddy at the Program for LGBTQ Health at Vanderbilt University. Trans Buddy provides trained peer advocates for transgender patients who are coming for doctor's appointments or other healthcare-related services. Whether you're looking for something that's related to medical transition, such as hormone therapy, or something completely unrelated, like breaking an arm or going to an ENT, we are here to help support any transgender patients that come through our doors. The Trans Buddy program was organically created through the efforts of transgender people and continues to consistently be led by trans people in Middle Tennessee. TransBuddy program is a one-of-a-kind in the nation, and institutions are looking to Vanderbilt to replicate and expand programs like ours.
We're not seeking to find solutions often for people's problems. We're just seeking to be there and to accompany and to be a friendly face, and to be a non-medical face in a place where everybody coming in the room is going to be a healthcare provider and may be unsafe.
Sometimes I'm there to be always observing kind of how hospital staff are interacting with the individuals. And again, using correct pronouns or treating the individual with respect.
That's the end of the clip.
No one told me they were spies. They're spies.
No, yeah. The hospital has a program where they hire perverts, or they might be on a volunteer basis. I don't know, but they hire perverts.
Here's what they just said.
You get assigned. You get assigned whenever you decide that your Johnny wants to be a Jane, and he's going to start going to visit doctors over at Vanderbilt. Whether it's for a transgendered reason or not, if he breaks his arm and has to go get that worked on, the hospital is going to provide you your own personal pervert to watch and make sure that, Johnny isn't called the wrong pronoun, or that the doctor isn't saying something like, you probably want to wait before you start hormone therapy. You probably
watchful
want to
waiting
wait.
is not even a thing that you can do anymore. It's
all, and you know what, you know what, Stephen, they're not going to suggest the perverts to little Johnny that maybe he wants to get on hormone therapy sooner, or that he might want to see their therapist, who's very transgender friendly. They're not going to make any of these suggestions.
Like the spying is egregious. Like, no, I'm the doctor. You're just somebody. Shut your mouth. You don't know what you're talking about.
And it's not just the doctors that they're there to police.
Exactly.
It's mom and dad too.
What are they saying in between these visits? What are they saying in between these medical personnel? What are they pushing onto these people? What false ideas are they putting in? I know you broke your arm, but I know you've been depressed. Like, you'd feel a lot better if you had your penis chopped off.
Yeah.
What? And again, going back to you're not safe. 61% of Tennessee went for Trump in both 2016 and the 2020 elections.
This is happening in Tennessee. If you don't think it's happening in Mississippi, you are ignorant.
Yes.
If you don't think it's happening in Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, these perverts are everywhere. Now, they're grooming these kids. That's what the Trans Buddy program is for.
That's what the buddy is. Yeah.
So Vanderbilt is in some hot water, but as we all know, the internet never remembers. So they just wiped it all and hope everyone will forget.
They did. They took down all that. They took down all that information. It's not even there anymore. Except
all of this that you have seen today was captured and saved, and then they didn't erase all of this stuff until after.
That's right. And Bill Lee, get your legislature together, outlaw this practice. Tate Reeves, get your legislature.
And Tater Tot, get on board.
DeSantis, Abbott, all of you, stop it.
Put egg on my face. Make me eat my words about useless Republicans.
Yeah, this
do something about this. This is such a win. Just from a strategic standpoint, it makes me angry. It is such a win.
Just be smart. Yeah, it's a winning issue. It's a winning issue. Just do it. Just do it. There's so many good things that could come from fixing this. You could save lives. You could win the long fight. You could win the short fight. This is all good stuff, and they've got to. If they would stop it, nothing but good things would happen.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm in a rush for Mississippi to get it done. It's probably more imperative that Texas get something like this done, because it's very bad. Texas is very well known for their hospitals, especially in the San Antonio area.
Yeah, San Antonio.
And,
I'd imagine Austin pretty big too. Yeah.
And I mean, all those big cities, the cities are always pretty blue, and I gotta imagine that's pretty bad there. Of the red states, it's probably pretty bad there.
So shame on Vanderbilt. We have officially shamed them.
Yeah. So we are going to end pretty briefly on a fun clip that we caught this week.
Yeah. That's great.
And so if anybody, like, nobody would really blame you for not knowing who Don Lemon is, although you may have heard his name. Don Lemon is a host over at the quickly dying CNN. CNN has lost,
about to be out of a job.
The CNN lost Chris Cuomo last year or 2 years ago. It's been a while. Brian Stelter's gone.
Brian Stelter and Don Lemon in the past year.
Yeah, Chris Wallace went from Fox News to CNN so that he could be there for the launch of CNN Plus, and CNN Plus tanked.
We got more viewers than they got, I'm sure. It's ridiculous.
And I'm not a huge fan of Fox News, but I can't stand Chris Wallace, and it's so delicious.
Yeah, I love it.
But anyway,
so let's love this clip of Don Lemon. This is great stuff.
Yeah, Don Lemon was a diversity hire, so he's a little bit harder to fire. So, but he, his big thing is he's a slavery expert. He's never really said slavery expert before, but he's black, so he knows about slavery, and he knows
he was
that it
recently
was the
bumped
worst
from prime time to morning because he was so terrible. He was bumped from prime time to the morning segment.
Yeah. So Don Lemon, he was educated in the American education system. He knows all about slavery and how evil it was in America, and how and in this case how evil it was in Britain. He's heard about this British colonialism, and he's mad about it. He wants Britain to answer for it. So let's see him confront the spokesperson for the royal family about this.
Well, this is coming when there's all of this wealth, and you hear about it comes as England is facing rising costs of living, a living crisis, austerity budget cuts, and so on. And then you have those who are asking for reparations for colonialism, and they're wondering, $100 billion, $24 billion here and there, 500 million there. Some people want to be paid back, and members of the public are wondering, why are we suffering when you are, you have all of this vast wealth? Those are legitimate concerns.
Well, I think you're right about reparations in terms of if people want it, though, what they need to do is you always need to go back to the beginning of a supply chain. Where was the beginning of the supply chain? That was in Africa. And when across the entire world, when the slavery was taking place, which was the first nation in the world that abolished slavery? The first nation in the world to abolish it. It was started by William Wilberforce, was the British. In Great Britain, they abolished slavery. 2,000 naval men died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. Why? Because the African kings were rounding up their own people. They had them on cages waiting in the beaches. No one was running into Africa to get them. And I think you're totally right. If reparations need to be paid, we need to go right back to the beginning of that supply chain and say, who was rounding up their own people and having them handcuffed in cages? Absolutely. That's where they should start. And maybe, I don't know, the descendants of those families where they died in the high seas trying to stop the slavery, that those families should receive something too, I think, at the same time.
It's an interesting discussion, Hillary. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh my God. We'll continue to discuss in the future.
It's so good.
So
it's so good.
It's like whatever she's like, hey, and what about those 2,000 families that died on the high seas? You see his face go, I've really stepped in it now.
You got to go to the African kings. They're the ones who started all this. And as you could just tell, Dawn's like, that's not where the money is, Hillary. She was a royal commentator, so she may not work for the royal family herself, but she's probably BBC or something like that. But that was great. That's a Kaylee McEnany moment. Like,
that was so good. So good. And so, I mean, I do want to talk about the content of what she said real quick, because there's a new movie coming out, right? What is
It's
that?
out. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Or something.
Woman Queen or something like that.
Go,
yeah.
Watch the movie. I don't care. Go look up the history of the people. Go look up those female warriors. Go look up the king. Go look what they were fighting for. It's the first time I've ever seen a pro-slavery movie come out in the U.S. because that's who those people were. Those people warred against other tribes. They enslaved them, and they sold them to Europeans for the transatlantic slave trade.
The Woman King.
They just made a movie about it. Yeah, The Woman King.
Oh.
Hey, they just made a movie about it. So,
yep.
Wow.
So
never
Hollywood celebrating your slave traders.
Yeah. Man, so, he realized he stepped in it halfway. Like, oh, this woman's smarter than I am. She knows a lot more history of this trade than I do. But I'm in trouble.
People. That's what happens when you don't actually teach your kids. But so I think that's going to do it for this week. We actually had some laughs this week. I love it. We've had some laughs this week, so that's good. I talked about football. I probably won't watch any more football for the rest of the week. And
see if I can make you watch some more next week. We'll see if we can get another clip up of you trying to explain football to people.
It's that time of year. Oh gosh. So all right. Well, that will do it for this week's episode of Always Right with Jeff and Steven. If you are enjoying the show, we very much appreciate you listening or watching wherever you may be doing so. Be sure that if you are on YouTube to like and subscribe. And if you want to leave a little comment, I think what I hear about the YouTubes is that helps our videos in our channel. If you are on Facebook, obviously we'd love for you to follow our page, and we are also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify podcasts. Steven, any closing thoughts?
Like, subscribe, feel free to comment, leave us recommendations. We will take everything we can and run with it to do better and talk about the things that y'all want to hear about.
Yeah, unless I get bored by your topic suggestions, and then we won't talk about it.
No, we're not talking about
that. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Be blessed.